It was only 8:45 am, but it already looked like this was going to be the worst Monday of my life. Earlier this morning, I kissed Marissa, my wife, on the cheek and wished her a good day. She's a real estate agent, a damn good one, judging by her commissions and bonuses, and has been one for most of our marriage. "Have a nice day to you too," she said in that fake realtor voice she liked to use. She knew I hated it when she used that voice and the false image that came with it. Even worse, she smiled at me, looking up at me. It was as if she had a secret that she was hiding from me. I got to the office, thinking about the work piled up on my desk. I had several reports that needed to be completed before the end of the month, which was just a couple of weeks away. As usual, I arrived at the office at 7:45, put my briefcase down, and went to the men's room before grabbing coffee. That's when it dawned on me. Standing at the urinal, I felt like I was running razor blades through my seat. I couldn't help it, I screamed in agony. My immediate supervisor, Alan Randall, used the urinal 2 stalls away from me. He heard me scream, finished his business, and zipped up my pants before coming to examine me. "Greg, what's wrong?" he asked worriedly. "By the way, it's me, Greg Watson." "I feel like I'm burning," I said. We looked into the urinal and saw a greenish discharge. Never in my life have I been so disgusted. "Okay, Greg," Alan said. "Listen, go get examined. Let me know what the doctor says." "I need to finish all these reports," I groaned. "Don't worry about them," he said. "I will farm them out, and you just take care of yourself. If you need a few days off, let me know. You have a lot of sick leave accounts." "Thanks, boss," I said. "I'm really sorry." "Hey, life happens," he said with a wry smile, trying to cheer me up. I washed my face and returned to my office, where I took my briefcase. When I left, I told the secretary that I would be gone the next day, maybe longer. I thought about going to my regular doctor, but his office was on the other side of town, and I doubted I could get to him today, so I decided to stop at the urgent care center, just a few blocks from the office. They took my samples and told me to sit in the waiting room while they were analyzed. It seemed like I waited forever, but in reality only about half an hour passed. Finally, a nurse came out and called my name. "Greg Watson," the young woman called. I looked up and saw her calling me over. She looked at me like I was an insect. I couldn't help but wonder why and stood up to follow her. She pointed to the examination room. "Have a seat, Mr. Watson," she said in a very unfriendly tone. I sat down and watched her sit down, looking at the piece of paper in front of her. She took my vital signs, blood pressure, temperature, things like that. After writing all this down, she looked at me. "The doctor will be with you soon," she said before leaving the room. A few minutes later, I heard a knock on the door, and an elderly gentleman in a white coat looked inside. Seeing me, he entered the room with a folder and sat down. "Mr. Watson, I am Dr. Smith," he said. "Your preliminary test results have come back, and it looks like you have a pretty serious case of gonorrhea." "Gonorrhea?" I asked in shock. "How is this possible?" "It's a sexually transmitted disease, Mr. Watson," he said, looking at me as if I was stupid. "I will prescribe you an antibiotic and recommend that you abstain from sexual activity for 7 days after finishing treatment. If your symptoms do not go away even after treatment, I recommend that you contact your healthcare provider." He went on to explain that there were other tests being done and I might not get results for a couple of weeks or more, and then he needed a list of everyone I had been with recently. "I've only been with one person sexually my entire life," I said. "My wife." He looked at me sadly for a few moments before turning his attention to my card. "But if I got it from her, wouldn't she also show some symptoms?" "Not necessarily, Mr. Watson," he said. "Even if she has symptoms, she may mistake them for an infection. She should get tested as soon as possible. The longer she waits, the greater the risk of developing serious complications. Sorry, Mr. Watson." He handed me a bag of pills and asked me to sign a couple of forms. "Be careful, Mr. Watson, and be sure to consult your doctor," he said before leaving. Wonderful, I thought to myself as I went through the checkout procedure. I got to my car and called my boss to tell him the news. "I'm sorry to hear that, Greg," Alan said. "Don't worry, discretion is my middle name. Take a vacation and come back when you are acquitted. I've already handed over your reports, so don't worry about anything. Get well." "Thank you," I said, ending the call. I was afraid to make the next call, but I had never hidden anything from my parents before, and I wasn't about to start now. I pressed the speed dial button for my parents and heard my father answer the call. "Hey, son, how are you?" he asked. "Are you at work?" "No, Dad, I have a little problem, and I need to talk to you and Mom for a bit, if that's okay." "Of course," he said. "Are the children okay?" "As far as I know," I said. "Look, I really don't want to discuss this over the phone." "Well, come, let's talk over a cup of coffee," he said. We ended the call, and I put my phone away before leaving. I guess I should explain something about my family. My sister Denise and I grew up in a very religious family. Our home was a very happy one, filled with laughter and love. We had a very happy childhood, and our parents loved each other very much. But we were raised under a fairly strict set of rules. One of them involved sex outside of marriage, which, according to my parents, is strictly prohibited. Because of this, I never went all the way with any woman until the day I married Marissa. Sure, I dated and fooled around a little, but that was it. I remember the day I told Marissa that I wanted to wait until we were married to have sex. She smiled widely at me and kissed me deeply. "That's so sweet," she said. "I promise I will rock your world the night we get married." And she did it. She didn't seem bothered by my lack of experience, and I enjoyed letting her teach me how to love her the way she wanted. I knew she wasn't a virgin when we got married, but I didn't mind as long as she remained faithful to me when we got married. She began working for a large city real estate office and worked toward obtaining her license. About a year after we got married, she gave birth to the first of our two daughters, Lisa. A year after Lisa was born, Ginger came into our lives. Marissa had a hard time with Ginger's birth, so they tied her tubes, telling me that two is enough for any couple. I respected her decision, and we moved on with our lives. I was hoping for a son, but I was quite happy with our two daughters. Naturally, they both became daddy's girls and quickly wrapped themselves around me. Marissa returned to work after her maternity leave ended and threw herself into her work. Often I found myself in the role of replacement mom when she worked in the evenings, showing houses or doing paperwork in the office. It didn't bother me, to be honest. I loved my girls and enjoyed taking care of them when Marissa couldn't be there. As the girls grew older, I spent more and more time with them, driving them to all their extracurricular activities if Marissa couldn't make it. Lisa was interested in music and took piano and guitar lessons, while Ginger was more athletic, playing softball or soccer. Over time, I began to notice that Marissa was away from home more and more often, and it wasn't just evenings. She was often sent to seminars in other cities, which took up weekends. Then there was the annual corporate retreat, which took her a whole week. She always called me every night to check on me and say hi to the girls, but it wasn't enough. She also began to act differently, and I began to wonder if she was getting too caught up in her work. Even the girls began to notice changes in their mother, but I never thought that she could cheat on me. She knew how I felt about cheating. Finally, I arrived at my parents' house and parked in the driveway. My father greeted me at the door with a tight hug and patted me on the shoulder. "The coffee has just been brewed. Come in, let's sit and talk," he said. I walked into the dining room and hugged my mom before we sat down. Mom poured us some coffee, and I added some pecan-flavored creamer. Father did the same, and we each took a sip. "Why don't we start with prayer?" suggested the father. "Certainly. I'm already used to it. It was their way of dealing with everything. First prayer, then discussion. We prayed for a few minutes, and then started talking. "What happened, son?" asked the father. "I was just at an urgent care center. I have gonorrhea," I said. "Oh God," the father said quietly. This was one of the qualities that I appreciated in him. He could handle almost anything, if that's true. "Did you cheat?" he asked after a few awkward seconds. No, Dad, never, I replied. Marissa is the only woman I've been with. He nodded. I believe you, son, he said. I just wanted to hear it from you. So what are you going to do? Mom asked. I see no other choice but to divorce her, I said. It's going to be hard on the girls, she said. Yes, but they're old enough to understand, I said. Besides, I won't be able to forget it. Even if she promises that she won't do it again, I won't be able to trust her words. Do you have any idea how long this has been going on? Asked the father. No, not the slightest. I just found out about it this morning. Just like that, I said. Well, adultery is a valid reason for divorce, he said. I'm sorry to say this, but I don't see any other way. Wait a minute, he added, standing up and heading to his office. I looked at my mother, who seemed shocked by what was happening. I'm so sorry this happened, Greg, she said. I always thought Marissa was a wonderful girl. Me too, Mom, I said. It seems she has deceived us all. By that time, the father returned with a business card holder. He flipped through the cards until he found the one he was looking for. Pulling it out, he looked at me in triumph. Here she is, he said. Do you know Gina Hawkins? Yes, she goes to our church, right? I asked. Yes, she is a family lawyer. Let me call her, he said. I wasn't surprised he had her card. As one of the deacons in the church, my father had many cards given to him by members of the ward. I watched as he called Gina's office and heard him talking to who I assumed was her secretary. Finally, he was transferred to her work line, and I heard his side of the conversation. Gina, hi, this is Dan Watson. Yes, from church. We're fine, thank you. How are you? Okay. Listen, I would like to see if you can accept my son soon. He's got a little problem, and I think you can help him. Oh, really? This afternoon? At 12:30? Amazing. I'll make sure he's there. Thanks, Gina. I owe you. Of course, take care and say hi to your little one. Bye-bye. He hung up and looked at me. It was Gina. She said she had an appointment and could see you at 12:30 today, he told me. She said you need to bring financial documents and tax returns for the last 2 years. Okay, I said. I guess I need to head home to get all these documents together. Sounds like a plan, son, the father said. You know you'll have to tell Marissa about the STD. She will need to get tested to make sure she doesn't infect anyone else. Maybe the girls can stay with us for a while, Mom suggested. At home, you will most likely be uncomfortable with what is happening. You're right, said the father. Maybe they'll stay for a couple of days until everything gets sorted out. Listen, son, why don't you pick up the girls after they get home from school? We will make sure they get to school on time. I will do so. Thank you, Dad, I said. We talked for a few more minutes, and I got up to leave. My father hugged me at the door. Everything will work out, son, he said. Just don't do anything stupid. I know you probably want to get back at Marissa, and I don't blame you for that. But remember what it says in Romans 12:19. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Understood. I don't want to get you out of jail. You have 2 daughters to think about. I chuckled at that. Don't worry, Dad. I understand everything, I said. I got into the car and drove home. Father was right about one thing. I wanted revenge on Marissa and her lover or lovers. I loved her unconditionally for over 15 years and was very upset that she thanked me like that. I returned home and started going through my files to find old tax returns. I also had to dig through Marissa's paperwork to get her declarations. About 8 years ago, she said she wanted to file separate returns, saying it would allow us to pay less taxes. I agreed with her proposal and didn't think about it. When I pulled out her tax forms, I learned the real reason she wanted to file separately. It turned out that she earned much more from bonuses and commissions than I expected. I knew how much she contributed to our joint account, so I wondered where all that extra money went. Rummaging further, I found a folder with bank statements. I noticed they were from a bank we didn't use. Looking at her latest statement, I saw that she had managed to accumulate almost $1 million over the past 8 years. I wondered what she was planning. Was this her exit strategy? Did she plan to leave when the kids left for college? I took the transcripts along with her tax forms and added them to my folder. I got into my car and was about to leave when my phone vibrated, signaling a new text message. It was a message from Marissa saying that she had a late show and didn't have to wait for her for dinner. Yes, of course, I thought. No problem, I texted back. I'll see you when you get home. I sent a message wondering if she would notice that I didn't say I loved her. Well, okay, I thought. I arrived at Gina's office, parked, and headed towards her office. When I arrived, I was greeted by an attractive blonde secretary. I'm going to see Gina Hawkins, I said. I have an appointment at 12:30. She searched the computer for a few seconds, then smiled and led me into Gina's office. Gina stood up and we shook hands. It's good to see you, Greg, she said with a smile. Would you like some coffee? Coffee would be great, I replied. Please. Gina looked at the secretary. Can you bring 2 cups and pecan cream? Gina asked. Of course, the secretary answered and left. A few minutes later, she returned with 2 cups and small dollops of cream. Gina motioned for me to sit down, and I sat down. I was surprised when your father called this morning, Gina said. So, do you have a problem that you need my help to solve? Yeah, looks like Marissa cheated on me, I said. I'm sorry to hear that, Gina replied. I thought you and her were the perfect match. I thought so too, but apparently I was wrong. So, tell me what happened, Gina asked. I told her about our marriage, ending with my visit to the clinic this morning and the bank statements I found this afternoon. I understand how you might feel, Gina said. Let me explain something to you about divorce in this state. You see, divorces are not about fairness. It's all about money, specifically how much you have and how much of it your wife's lawyer can get. Although this state recognizes no-fault divorce, you can file on the grounds of adultery, but you will need very convincing evidence to do so. What about the STD she gave me? I asked. It does sound convincing, but her lawyer could easily argue that you yourself got it from another woman, Gina said. You and I know it's not true, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what the judge believes. As for the money she saved, she can claim it was a retirement surprise. Do you believe this yourself? I asked. No, I don't believe it. It's more like an escape plan. She's obviously waiting for the best moment to make her move. I would guess that she is waiting until the girls finish school so as not to be burdened with them. Again, this will be difficult to prove in court. So I'll just be left with nothing. Is that what you mean? No, not like that at all, she said. I have a private detective on contract, and I can assign him to this case this afternoon if you want. If she really cheats, we'll catch her. Do you want to go down this path? It may be quite expensive, but at least you will have evidence that can be used in court. Yes, let's do that, I said. Okay, she said. I'll need as much information as possible, the make and model of her car, license plates, things like that. Do you have any idea where she might be? Wait a second, I said, pulling out my phone. I installed a phone finder app when she lost hers a few months ago. I'll see if it still works. I opened the app and started searching. According to the data, her phone was located in a house in the northern part of the city. I showed Gina the address and she wrote it down. Okay, I'll send this information to my detective right now, she said, picking up the phone. While I waited, she called the detective and emailed him the information I had given her. She ended the call and looked at me. Everything is done. If anything turns up, we'll know about it soon enough. Now let's get down to business. You have 2 teenage daughters, right? Yes, Lisa and Ginger. Lisa is 14 years old and Ginger is 13. They are not yet old enough to choose which parent they want to stay with, but they are getting close. Do you want to seek custody? Yes, I want to, I told her. Understood. Just keep in mind that courts usually favor the mother. It may take effort, but we'll try. Who is the primary caregiver? She asked. Me, since Marissa is often out in the evenings, I said. Just wondering, are you 100% sure these are your children? I'm sure of it. But does it matter now? My name is on their birth certificates. I'm the one who raised them, changed their diapers. I'm the one who paid for their upkeep. I see your point, she said. However, it may be useful to know for sure whether this is true or not. I'll give you the address of the laboratory where you can pick up the test kit. They usually get things done pretty quickly. Okay, I said. Now about your house. Are you buying or renting? Neither, I said. The house belonged to my grandparents. After their deaths, it went into a family trust in my parents' names. They allowed us to live there. I see, that means you don't have a mortgage. Okay, she said. I'm sure there are things in the house that will need to be divided. Typically, joint assets such as bank accounts and so on are divided 50-50ths. I'll give you a to-do list when we're done here. Fine. Anything else? I asked. Not yet, she said. I'll start preparing the paperwork, but let's wait to see what my detective finds out before we move forward. Complete your to-do list anyway. Do you think I should confront her about this right away? I asked. That might not be the worst idea. At least let her know that she needs to get tested for STDs. This way, you won't be held responsible if it infects someone else. Sounds logical, I said. She finished her paperwork and handed me the to-do list along with the lab's business card. Anything else? I asked. That's all for now, she said. Go and do it. We'll let you know as soon as we hear from the detective. You can contact my secretary about the fee. And Greg. Yes? Don't do anything stupid. We'll get through this. It won't be fun, but then everything will get better. I know, I said. Thank you for all your help. Please, she said. We'll be in touch. With that, I left, wrote out a check for the fee, and headed to the laboratory. After receiving the kit, I stopped by the bank and did most of what Gina had written. Then I returned home. I think at this point most men would probably sit down and get drunk, wondering what happened and why. But I didn't do this. Of course it hurt. I have never experienced such pain and betrayal in my life. But I don't drink, I never have. This was another rule I grew up with. My parents didn't drink, and neither did I. But I made myself some coffee and sat down with a cup when it was ready. But I didn't have much time to think about the situation as my two girls burst through the door. They usually returned home around this time after the bus dropped them off. But usually they don't see me when they come home. Dad, are you home? Lisa said. Are you okay? Yes, Dad. Why did you come back so early? Ginger asked. Today has been quite a hectic day, I told them. Look, why don't you both go and pack your things for a couple of days? You will stay with your grandparents for a while. Why, Dad? Ginger asked. What's happening? Is something wrong with Mom? Did you quarrel? Actually, yes, something is wrong, and no, your mom and I didn't fight. I'm afraid that may happen later, I told them. You caught her cheating, right? Asked Lisa. I looked at her, shocked. What did she know? Why do you think so? I asked her. She lowered her head, embarrassed. I heard her talking to someone on the phone a couple of times, Lisa said. I couldn't hear everything, but she was using that fake voice of hers. You know, the one she uses to piss you off. Yes, I know, I said. What did you hear? Something like I can't wait to see you again, love. Like I said, I didn't hear everything, and she was giggling like a little girl. But it didn't sound like a professional call. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I know how much you hate gossip, she said. It's okay, I said, hugging her. Plus, she's been acting pretty weird lately, Lisa said. It's like she doesn't have the time or inclination to talk to us. Do you feel the same? I asked, looking at Ginger. She nodded. Yes, she said, like she's not interested in us or something. Well, you can always pester me whenever you want, I said, hugging them both. But first, I need to swab your cheek. Cheek swab? Ginger asked as I opened the test kit. Yes, I said. My lawyer said I should do a DNA test. You don't believe that we are your children? Asked Lisa. I believe, I told them, but she wants to make sure. So you're going to get a divorce? Asked Lisa. Looks like it, I told her. You can't forgive her for what she did, Ginger asked. I don't think so, I told them. She gave me a little gift, so to speak. I had to go to the doctor this morning. Oh, damn, Lisa said, almost swearing. Sorry, she added, embarrassed. It's okay, dear. I also wanted to swear more than once today, I told her. Now let me take these samples from you. I took one swab and ran it over the inside of Lisa's cheek, then did the same with Ginger. Once I had their samples in my kit, I took a sample from my cheek and placed it in a separate bottle. Okay, you two go and get enough to last you a couple of nights. We need to leave here in 15 minutes. And don't forget your homework, I said. They went to their rooms and gathered while I assembled the testing kit. My plan was to take the kids to their grandparents' house and then take the kit back to the lab. Dad, if you get divorced, can I stay with you? Lisa asked while I was driving. Yeah, me too, Ginger added. I hope so, girls, I said. I'm asking for custody, but you should know that the courts usually give custody to the mother. I don't want to stay with her, Lisa said. Right now, I hate her for what she did to us. I thought about telling her not to hate her mother, but I changed my mind. She just expressed the same thing I was thinking. I understand how you feel, honey, I said. Just remember, no matter what happens, I will always love you, and I will always be there for you. I love you too, Daddy, she said as tears streamed down her face. Seeing her cry made me even angrier at Marissa than before. I vowed to make her pay for this. Vengeance belongs to me, I will repay, says the Lord. I heard my father's words in my mind. We finally arrived at my parents' house, and I pulled into the driveway. I turned to them, hugged and kissed each of them, and promised to call back later. After the kids left, we all went to the porch where Dad was waiting. The girls hugged him and carried their things inside. I hugged him, and my mom came over to say hello. I better get to the lab before it's too late, I said. Are you all right? Dad asked. I'm doing as well as I can under the circumstances. Okay, we will pray for you. Call us and let us know how it went with Marissa, he said. I'll do it, but I'm not too sure when it will happen, I said. It's okay, honey, Mom said. You can call any time. Thank you, I told her before hugging her. I better leave. I got back into the car and headed to the laboratory. I got there about half an hour before closing and gave my testing kit to the secretary. How long will it take for me to get results? I asked. We can get them to you by the end of the week, she said with a smile. Great, thanks, I said. I got out and headed towards the house. On the way, I decided to call Loretta, Marissa's older sister. I plugged in my Bluetooth earpiece and pressed the speed dial button on my phone. She answered after the second ring. Hey, Greg, how is my favorite brother-in-law? She asked. It was better, I said. I have a question for you if you have a minute. Of course, she said. Have you talked to Marissa recently? Not since we were at your house last month, she said. Everything is fine? No, that's not true, I said. She listened calmly as I told her the Reader's Digest version of what was happening. Oh my God, she said. I hate to say it, Greg, but it looks like she's back to her old ways. Old habits? What do you mean? I asked. When she was younger, she was quite wild. Changed boyfriends like most people go through socks. I cheated on almost every guy I was with. She was like this for most of it, and I thought she was done with it all. She told me she met her soulmate and finished playing on the field, so I didn't tell you anything. Sorry, I probably should have told you. No, it's okay, I said. It's not your fault. I understand you are planning on kicking her out tonight, and you were wondering if she could stay here with us. Actually, it was, I said, if that's okay with you. I heard her sigh over the phone. I think she can stay here for a while, at least until she gets stronger, she said. Frank won't be too happy about it, though. I don't want this to cause you guys any problems, I told her. It's okay, he'll handle it if she's not here too long. Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. I don't know when she'll be home tonight, but I'll call you when she leaves. Thank you, she said. How do girls perceive this? They're not happy, but they're doing better than I thought. You raised a couple of good young women there, Greg. You need to be strong for them, she said. I'm trying, I said. Well, I have to go. I still need to cook dinner. Call me later, okay? I will, I told her before we ended the conversation. I got home and decided to heat up some leftover meatloaf for dinner. I had just finished watching the evening news when my phone rang. I saw that it was a call from Gina and answered. Hi, Greg, she said when I answered. I looked at my watch and saw that it was already about 6:30. Hey, you yourself, I said. Are you working late today? For you, yes, she said. I just received preliminary information from the detective. It seems your wife was a busy girl. She's been with 3 men since 1 p.m. today. Wow, I thought. 3 men in one day? When can she finish her work? Really? I asked. Yes, she said. Anyway, I will forward the information to your email. Photos, video, and summary of the report. I would recommend that you don't watch the video, but you should listen to the last few minutes. Quite an instructive thing. I've seen adult films before when I was in college. Some of my classmates liked it and shared it with me. So, do you now have enough evidence for a divorce? Oh yes, she said. Call me when you're done listening to the audio, okay? Okay, thanks, Gina, I said when we ended the call. I turned on my laptop and checked my email. And indeed, a letter arrived from Gina with some attachments. I took a deep breath and opened the photos. There were 4 of them, depicting Marissa with different men in different poses. I opened the video and took it to the point that Gina said in her email. I had no desire to watch a video of her having sex, but I was curious to hear what she had to say. I started the video and saw Marissa sitting on a large bed, presumably in one of the houses she was showing. She was wearing a robe, but I could tell there was nothing underneath. Next to her was a large, muscular man. That was amazing, baby, he said with a smile. No one has ever given me such pleasure before. Well, thank you, good sir, she said, smiling back. And I must say that you are very well prepared. He grinned back. I see you're married, he said, pointing to her ring. For now, she replied. I noticed that you are married too, she added, looking at his ring. Yes, my wife and I are in an open marriage, he said. What about you? Our marriage is not as open as yours, but I take liberties when they arise, she said. So your husband doesn't know anything, he asked. No, he doesn't, she said. He has no idea how slutty his wives are. Now I know you're a lying piece of trash, I thought to myself. What, he can't cope at home? Asked the man. Of course, I taught him everything he knows, she replied. Did you teach him? He was surprised. Was he a virgin when you got married? You won't believe it, but it was, she said. Imagine a 23-year-old virgin. He is a religious fanatic. He grew up in a family of the same religious fanatics. Doesn't smoke, doesn't drink. Heck, he doesn't even swear. He probably would have had a heart attack if I said damn in front of him. He didn't even know how to have sex until we got married. Damn, the man said. Sounds like a real loser. Why then do you stay with him? Do you love him? In a way, probably yes, at least a little. He is a good father to my girls. Take good care of them. Don't complain when I come late. Other than that, he's completely boring, she said. His girls? He asked. She shrugged. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe. Honestly, I don't care. He believes they are his, and that's all that matters, she said. How long have you been cheating on him, if you don't mind? He asked. I don't care, she said. To be honest, I cheated throughout my entire marriage. And he never suspected? He asked. No, I have no idea. He's never been with another woman, so he wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So he's getting a secondary product and doesn't even know it? Asked the man. About that, she said. I started to feel sick at the thought that she had been doing this to me the entire time we were married. Are you planning to stay with him? He asked. Yes, bye. At least until the girls graduate from high school and go off to college, she said. It's about 4 or 5 years from now. By then, I will have everything ready for my escape. Why wait? He asked. Because the courts usually give custody to the mother, and the last thing I want is to be saddled with two teenagers, she said. What are you planning to do next? He asked. I'm planning to have a party, maybe a couple of parties. I haven't done this for years. Maybe I'll take a cruise or retire to Costa Rica or something. I don't know, she said. Maybe I can arrange sex with men before you leave, he said. Are you interested in this? Oh, yes, of course, she said. Think you can get away for the weekend? He asked. Of course, she said. I'll tell Greg I have a mandatory seminar this weekend or something. He will believe everything I tell him. Great, he said. I have several friends who would love to try sex with you. Let me know when you can get out, and we'll arrange it. You have my number. I will, she said with a smile. He looked at his watch. It's late, I have to go. I look forward to seeing you again, sweetheart. I'm looking forward to it too, she said. He left the room and Marissa laid down on the bed with a huge grin on her face. Oh, Greg, she said to the now empty room, you can't even imagine what awaits you. I paused the video and wiped away the tears that were now streaming down my face. I had no idea that she was so evil. I sighed and dialed Gina's number. I just finished the video, I said. You were right. This is educational. So, how do you want me to proceed? She asked. Burn it to the ground, I said firmly. It will be done, she said. What about all these men? Can we do something about them? I asked. I'm afraid not, she said. Domestic interference claims are no longer accepted in this state. Don't worry. I have a suspicion that they will have problems when their wives get a dose of gonorrhea. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. I quietly repeated the words my father had told me earlier. Gina chuckled quietly at this. Well, I have to go, she said. I will prepare the documents and send them to her this week. She wanted an escape, we will arrange it for her, but not the way she wanted. Thank you, Gina, I owe you, I said. I'm glad to help. Just take care of your girls, she said. We ended the conversation and I sat down on the couch, tears streaming down my face. It hurt to think that I had given Marissa the 15 best years of my life. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated again. It was a call from Marissa. Hello, I said, answering the call. Hi, Greg, she said. Are you okay? Your voice is somehow different. It was a bad day, I said. What's happening? I'm finishing things up here. I think I made another deal, she said. Okay, I said in a neutral tone. I'll be leaving soon, so I'll be home in half an hour, okay? Yes, of course, I told her. Okay, see you at home. Love you, she said in her fake voice. And you, I said, ending the call. I wondered if she noticed that I didn't say outright that I loved her, and then I realized that I didn't care whether she noticed or not. I printed out 4 photos, placed them on one sheet of paper, and put them in a folder. I was going to meet her that night when she returned home. I gathered all the materials on the kitchen table, then made a cup of coffee and sat down to wait for Marissa. I waited and waited. An hour passed and she still wasn't there, but I thought she might have lingered somewhere, so I continued to wait. 2 hours later, she still wasn't there, and I started to worry. I called her cell phone, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message and sent her a text, but received no response. 3 hours later, it was still the same. I started to think that maybe she had been in an accident. Almost 3.5 hours later, I received a call on my home phone. I picked up the phone, hoping it was her. But no. Greg Watson, I said, answering the phone. Mr. Watson, this is Angela Barnes from Mercy Hospital. Are you related to Marissa Watson? She's my wife, I said. Not for long, though. Mr. Watson, your wife was in an accident and was brought here for treatment. Can you come as soon as possible? Yes, I said. Is she okay? What happened? Sorry, sir, I can't give you that information, Angela said. Her doctor would like to talk to you. When you arrive, go to the front desk and they will show you in. Thank you, I said. She ended the call, and I began to wonder what happened. I put the paper with the photographs in an envelope and put it in my jacket pocket. I thought about calling my dad or Loretta, but decided to wait until I knew more. I got into the car and went to the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, I walked inside and headed to the front desk. I introduced myself to the middle-aged woman behind the counter and gave my wife's name as a patient. She checked the information on the computer and turned to the other woman next to her. "Can you escort Mr. Watson to the IQ?" she asked. "Of course," she replied, looking at me. She walked around the counter and motioned for me to follow her. We went up to the floor where the intensive care unit was located, and I was greeted by a uniformed policeman. "Mr. Watson?" he asked. "It's me," I replied. "I'm Officer Simpson. I was responding to a call about your wife's accident," he said. "What happened?" I asked. "She was driving through the intersection of 3rd and Main when a truck hit her. The driver of the other car was drunk and ran a red light and hit her car on the driver's side. I'm sorry," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "Her car was taken to a wrecked car lot. There's almost nothing left of it," he said, handing me a card with the company's address. "If you need anything else, don't hesitate to call." "Thank you, officer," I said, taking his card. After he left, a man in a white medical coat approached me. "Greg Watson?" he asked. "Yes," I answered. "I'm Dr. Blake. I am the doctor who is treating your wife. Can we talk a little alone?" he asked. "Of course," I replied. He led me into a small room, closed the door, and sat down on a chair at the round table. I sat down opposite him. "How is my wife?" I asked. "She has numerous fractures and internal injuries. She also received a serious blow to the head. We put her in a medically induced coma to help her recover. But there's something else. Did you know that your wife has gonorrhea?" he asked. "Yes, I found out about it this morning," I replied. "Have you started treatment?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Fine. But that's not all. Our initial tests indicate that she may be HIV positive. We've sent her blood for a full test, but the results may take days, if not weeks. Have you been tested for HIV?" he asked. "No, as far as I know," I replied. "They took blood when I was at the urgent care center this morning, but I don't know if they tested for HIV. I recommend that you contact your primary care physician as soon as possible. Better tomorrow. The sooner you get tested, the better. If you or she is confirmed to have HIV, you should discuss this with your doctor. Generally, if you practice safe sex and take medication, you can have a very normal sex life," he said. "It won't happen, doctor," I said. "I understand," he replied. "How long will she be in a coma?" I asked. "It's up to her," he said. "This can take anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks. Depending on how quickly she recovers, she may be here for a while after this." "Can I see her now?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "She really needs your support right now." I chuckled quietly at this. He stood up and opened the door. "She's in Ward 5, right there," he added, pointing to her room. "Thank you, doctor," I said, shaking his hand. I entered the room and looked at her. She was covered in bandages. One leg was in a cast up to the hip. Her face was covered in bruises and cuts that were stitched up. She looked like she had been through a war. I offered prayers for her and then took off my wedding ring. I pulled out the envelope with the photos and wrote her name on the front. Then I put my ring in there and sealed it. I looked at the nurse who was caring for her. "Can you give this to her when she wakes up?" I asked. "Of course," the nurse replied. "Put this on the tray over there," she added, pointing to an empty tray on wheels. "Thank you," I said, placing the envelope on the tray where Marissa could see it. I looked one last time at the woman lying on the bed. Even though I hated what she did, I didn't want to see her like that. I noticed that she still had her rings on her finger, so I took them off and put them in my pocket. "Goodbye, Marissa," I said quietly. "See you later." The nurse looked at me in surprise as I left the room. On the way home, I called Loretta to tell her everything that happened. She was shocked when I told her what had happened and the possibility that Marissa might be HIV positive. "Greg, You know Frank won't let her stay with us if she's HIV positive, she said. I know it's safe, but he won't want her around the kids. I can't go against him on this. Her parents retired and moved to Florida a few years ago, so that wasn't an option. Looks like I'll have to find her an apartment, I said. I think this would be the best solution, she said. I'm sorry, Greg, but I can't put her before my family. She herself is to blame for this. As soon as you find a place to live, I'll help move her things, but then I'll wash my hands of it. I understand, I said. I don't blame you. It's late, it's time for me to go to bed, but keep me informed, Greg, she said. I will, I replied. Thank you. It was almost midnight when I returned home. Tired, I undressed and fell into bed, falling asleep almost as soon as my head hit the pillow. The next morning, I called the doctor's office to make an appointment for that day. I was a little surprised when they said they had free time in the morning. Then I called my parents and told them what happened. They were shocked to hear about the accident and the possibility that she might be HIV positive, but said they would take the girls to hospital if they wanted to see her. I also told them about the evidence I had. My father asked me to send everything to him via email. It's pretty scary out there, I warned. It's all right, son, he said. I'm a grown man. I then forwarded the email to him and called Gina to update her. She was also shocked, but said that this would give her time to finalize the divorce papers. I then called Marissa's office to inform them of her accident. They expressed their condolences and promised to come and see her. The next 2 weeks were intense. I was able to find a 2-bedroom apartment on the ground floor with an attached garage, so I put down a deposit and paid 2 months rent up front, all from Marissa's half of the bill. The girls and Loretta came to help pack Marissa's things, including our wedding album, and we moved them into the apartment. I also received the DNA test results and was delighted to find out that both girls were indeed mine. This made me smile. I met with a representative from the insurance company, and he inspected Marissa's car. I couldn't stop wondering how she survived the accident. The insurance company representative said the same thing. He ended up writing the car off. Since the car and insurance policy were in her name, she will receive a check. I took her things from the car and took them to her new apartment. Have you been to Marissa's? Mom asked a week after her accident. No, I wasn't, I replied. At least since that first day. And what? Just wondering, she said. She made it clear that she didn't love us and wanted to run away. I give her what she wants, just not in her time, I said. 2 weeks later, on the same day, I returned to the doctor. I got rid of the gonorrhea that Marissa gave me, but the doctor was still waiting for the HIV results. The pain in my groin has almost disappeared, but the emotional pain I felt in my heart will take a long time to heal. I called Alan and told him I was going back to work tomorrow, which made him very happy. That same day, I received a call from the hospital that Marissa had finally come out of her coma. The nurse who called said they were running tests and examining her and suggested I come over later in the day. This suited me just fine. I called Gina and told her the news. She filed divorce papers in court, and we both waited for Marissa to wake up so she could be served. Gina arranged for a bailiff to meet me at the hospital that day. My next call was to Loretta, who agreed to meet me in her room. I told the girls that their mother had woken up, but they just shrugged their shoulders and said, "Oh, well. I'm going to visit her this afternoon. Do you want to come with me?" I asked them. "No, thanks, Dad," Lisa replied. "I'm mad at her now." "Me too," Ginger added. "Besides, I have a lot of homework." "Okay, then I'll take you to your grandparents before we leave," I said. I knew it would be harder for them than it was for me, and I didn't want to force them to see their mother if they didn't want to. At about 4:30 p.m., I took them to their parents and explained that Marissa had woken up and I would meet Loretta and the bailiff there. "Let us know how it went, son," the father said. "I'll let you know," I replied. "I'll come back for the girls when this is all over." "Great, just in time for Mom's lasagna," he said with a smile. Mom's lasagnas were legendary and always lifted my spirits. "Sounds great," I said before driving away. When I got to the hospital, I went to the ward where Marissa was lying. I saw Loretta at the nurse's counter talking to the doctor and noticed a man in a beige jacket holding an envelope. Without a doubt, it was a bailiff. I walked up to the nurse's counter and spoke to the doctor. "How is she?" I asked. "She woke up and her numbers are good," he said. "The antibiotics we prescribed her did their job, and now we're just watching. She seems to be recovering well. However, I want to keep her here for another week, but I think that after this time she can be discharged." "Okay," I replied. "Can she have visitors?" "Yes, but not for too long," he said. "I won't be late," I assured him. He nodded understandingly. Loretta and I headed to her room, and the bailiff joined us. Marissa looked up as we entered. I noticed that she had already opened the envelope that I left here on the first day. "Hi, Greg." "Loretta," she said quietly. "Marissa," I replied. Loretta didn't say anything. Marissa looked at me sadly before speaking. "I guess you found out everything," she said, pointing to the envelope. "Yes," I replied. "So you hired someone to keep an eye on me? How did you know?" she asked. "You infected me," I said. "That's how I found out. And yes, I hired a private investigator after that. I have photos, video, and audio. There is more than enough evidence of treason." I looked at the bailiff and nodded to him. He turned to Marissa and spoke. "Are you Marissa Watson?" he asked. "Yes," she answered quietly. He handed her the envelope and took a photo. "You have been served with documents," he said before leaving. "You couldn't wait until I was discharged to file for divorce?" Marissa asked. "No," I replied. "You wanted to run away. I just sped up your plan by a few years." "Do the girls know?" she asked. "Yes, they do," I replied. "And they're not happy with you right now. That's why they're not here. And you don't have to worry about being burdened with them. I want full custody. I will give you visitation rights if they want to see you. But at this point, they want nothing to do with you. And I don't blame them." She looked at me, shocked that I was using her own words against her. "I guess you hate me now," she said. "Hate is a pretty strong word," I said. "Let's just say I don't respect you anymore." She nodded. "Do you think you can forgive me?" she asked. "Maybe one day I can look at my girls and not see the pain and suffering on their faces. The pain and suffering you caused them, by the way. And by the way, the girls are really mine. I did DNA tests." "So where will I live when I get discharged?" she asked. "I found you an apartment. Loretta has agreed to take you there when you are discharged." Marissa looked at her older sister when I said this. "All your belongings have already been moved, and utilities are in your name." I took out another envelope and handed it to her. "This is your half of our joint bills minus the deposit and 2 months of rent for the apartment. Your car is written off, so you'll get a check for that too." She took the envelope and nodded. "By the way, I also know about your escape fund. My lawyer froze this account. If you sign the papers, she will release the funds. Minus my half, of course," I said. She looked at me, shocked that I had found her stash. "I will fight for this," she said. "I don't think that would be a wise decision," I replied. "Unless, of course, you want the evidence I have to become public. They're quite graphic." She sank at my words. "Have your lawyer look at the papers. I am sure that you will find them as fair as possible in this situation. Sign them, and we will end this farce." Marissa looked at Loretta, hoping she would stand up for her, but she didn't. "You stupid bitch," Loretta hissed. "I warned you years ago that if you don't pull yourself together, you'll get burned. You lied to more than just your husband and your children. You lied to me when you told me you were done with this crap. I promised Greg I'd take you to your apartment when you were released, but that's it. Then I wash my hands." "What?" Marissa asked, her eyes filling with tears. I knew how close they were, and I knew it was hard for the older sister. "You heard everything, you stupid lying trash," Loretta said. "After I take you to your apartment, I don't want to see you again until you get your life in order." "Understood." Through her tears, Marissa nodded. "Forgive me," she said, sobbing. "This won't help you," Loretta said. "I'm serious." I don't want to see you until you wake up. And start by apologizing to your husband and your children." Marissa looked at me, full of tears. "I'm sorry, Greg," she said. "I know you don't believe me, but I really love you." "You're right. I don't believe you," I replied. "Sign the papers, Marissa. Let's finish this now." She nodded without saying anything. "Goodbye, Marissa." I was about to leave, but she spoke before I reached the door. "Can I call the girls, Greg, please?" she asked. "You can call whenever you want," I told her, "but I can't guarantee they'll want to talk to you." "I understand," she replied quietly. "Thank you for that at least." "You're welcome," I replied before turning and walking away. As I walked through the ward, I noticed that the nurses looked at me with contempt. Apparently, they didn't like the fact that I filed for divorce right in the hospital. So be it, I thought. I went to my parents' house and drowned my sorrows in a huge helping of my mother's lasagna. The divorce went off without a hitch. 3 months later, I was free in every sense. Not only was I free of Marissa, but I also learned that I had dodged a bullet and was HIV negative. Surprisingly, Marissa's results also came back negative. Gina gave me a check for just over $450,000, half of the money from Marissa's secret account. I didn't need all that money, so I put it in 2 accounts to pay for my girls' college education. Life went on for the three of us. Lisa and Ginger became my main goal in life. Of course, things were a little tense at times. It's not easy being a single father with 2 teenage daughters, but I managed, thanks to the help and advice of my mother. I haven't been following Marissa's life, but the girls have told me that she is adjusting to her new life as a divorced woman. Yes, they finally spoke to their mother, and she sincerely apologized to them. It was almost a year before the girls relented enough to spend even one day with their mother. She bought a new car and returned to selling houses, but with a different company. Somehow rumors about her adventures leaked out, and her management was not very happy about what they found out. She was offered to either resign voluntarily or be fired. She chose the first option and got a job in another company, where, as the girls told me, she was doing well. And they added, she had finally abandoned her false persona. For me, I found that there were many women in the church who showed attention to me. I was literally inundated with various dishes that I could take home with me: pies, casseroles, even lasagna, and it seemed like my girls really wanted me to start dating again. "Dad, you need to start dating again," Lisa told me. "It's not good to be alone." "I don't even know where to start," I said. "And I'm not alone. I have you, and you take up all my time." "But we won't be here forever. It's simple, Dad," Ginger said. "You approach a woman and invite her to dinner. You can do this, right?" I looked at my youngest daughter and wondered, since when did she become an expert at dating? "I think I can try," I said. That Wednesday night, I ran into Rhonda Carson in line at our church coffee shop. She lost her husband in Iraq several years ago and was raising her 17-year-old daughter alone. She was one of the women who brought me a casserole for dinner. "Hi, Rhonda, how are you?" I asked. "I'm hanging in there, Greg," she replied. "How are you?" "Not bad, and the casserole you gave me last week was great," I said. "Thank you. How do you cope with raising your girls?" she asked. "Sometimes it's not easy, but overall I manage." She laughed at this. "Well, if you can handle it, then you're doing it right," she said. "How are you coping? You also have a teenage daughter," I asked. "The hardest thing is dealing with everything alone," she replied. "I understand that," I said. We grabbed coffee and sat around the table discussing the challenges of single parenting when I decided to make the move. "Look, Rhonda, I'm not very experienced at this, but would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Maybe this Friday?" I asked. She thought for a moment, smiled, and nodded. "Yes, Greg, I would," she said. "What are you planning?" "I don't know," I said. "I would like to try a new place, Texas Roadhouse. How do you like this idea?" "I don't mind steak," she said. "Of course it sounds fun. Maybe after this we'll watch a movie or something like that." "Great," I said. "I can pick you up at 6:30 if that suits you." "Sounds great," she replied. Actually, you can bring the girls and they can stay with Linda if that's not a problem. They had known each other for a long time and were friends, so I thought it would be a good idea. The girls were thrilled that I had asked Rhonda out on a date, and they loved the idea of spending an evening with Linda, so it was all set. That Friday, I took the girls to Rhonda's, and we went out to dinner. Rhonda looked very attractive in her denim suit, and we had a great time. We didn't have sex that night, but she gave me a passionate kiss when I dropped her off at her house. I noticed 3 pairs of eyes watching us from her window, and I thought I saw them high-fiving each other. This was the best night I've had in months, Rhonda said as I held her. For me too, I replied. What do you say we do this again soon? She asked. Maybe we can send the girls to the movies while we stay home and play, she added, running her hand down my leg. I felt a familiar excitement. This seems like a good idea, I said, running my hand down her smooth leg. The girls were thrilled with how my date with Rhonda went, and I have to admit that I felt really good about myself and enjoyed my time with Rhonda. I'm not sure if anything long-term will come of this, but I'm willing to take the risk. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.